The following is a Hoop Ball presentation.
Hello and welcome to the Hoop Ball NBA DFS Today podcast. Today is actually Saturday night, and we are recording for a Sunday slate that we're excited about. It's a 5-game slate, so we're going to be putting this out here very shortly this evening, so that we'll have everything in everybody's hands for a 3 p.m. lock on Sunday. I am Joe Sarvati, by the way, affectionately known as Coach, and I am joined for the first time with a new and exciting addition to our DFS family. And I know that you've already done one show with Apotria, but that's not official, brother. So it's Andrew Hanson, and great to have you, Andrew, and I'm really excited to work with you.
Yeah, me too, Coach. All right, well, let's make it official. If that didn't count with Mike, then let's do it for real tonight.
That's right. Apotria's was just a run through. That's for sure. This is the official Andrew christening as a Hoop Ball DFS GOAT. Now you go to GOAT status right away.
Let's do it.
All right, man. Before we jump in, just to mention, our presenting sponsor is Fantasy Draft. We really appreciate them coming forward and partnering with us at Hoop Ball to bring you 7-day-a-week DFS content throughout the preseason and regular season. So we would encourage you to jump on fantasydraft.com, sign up with the promo code HoopBall, and get 7 days free membership up to $1,000 in your wagers in your DFS contest. So they're the best. They're the only rake-free site in the industry, and we're just ecstatic to be a part of them going forward. And tomorrow, which some of you will listen to this late Saturday night, most of you probably Sunday morning or early after, right before football kickoff. So make sure you jump on this fantasy draft offer for the Sunday NFL kickoffs, because that locks at 1 Eastern, and it is a $500,000 NFL Hooters contest. Have you had a chance to try that out, Andrew?
Yeah, I did. Week 1, I think it was, and I love the rake free. Mike and I chatted about that. Instead of donating 10 to 15% as part of a contest in terms of the rake, or sometimes even more, depending on whether it's a GPP head-to-head, how many people are involved. You don't have to worry about that.
Yep. Oh, I know. And I mean, if you do it play for a while, it gives you a little calculator on there showing you how much money you've saved in rake. And I know for me, who plays a lot more, I do some baseball and a little golf, but it's incredible how much that adds up. And as we get into basketball, and I don't know, do you play mainly cash or GPPs, Andrew?
Primarily GPPs.
Okay, good.
I'll start doing more cash this year, especially since it's right in your wheelhouse and you're off to such a hot start.
Yeah, and hey, I just want to keep it going. But the cool thing for me is Mike Apotri is more of a GPP player too. So I love being matched up on a show with somebody that's more GPP centered, because I'm going to always be more on the cash and single entry side. So it helps, gives our listeners a lot more options. So that's really cool. That's great. All right. Let's see. The other, we might as well just get right into this slate. Like I said, it's a 3 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Central lock time. So again, we're getting this show completed on Saturday night, the 12th, for the Sunday, the 13th card. And the first game is the Cleveland Cavaliers at the Boston Celtics. And I'll jump right into the mix, Andrew, with with the Cavaliers. The only injury that they have as of right now and is Garland, the rookie guard, is doubtful. So generally, that in preseason means they're more than likely out. And again, as we bring these shows to you, the evening before the games begin, make sure you follow at Hoopball Fantasy and follow us as well on Twitter at Joe Sarvadi, JoeSarvadi, and at Language Olympic, just like it's stated. That's Andrews. And also at Mike Apotria, Mikapotria. And the reason I take the time to share all three of those is, and all four of them with the at Hoopball Fantasy, is because there are always changes, scratches, and you have to stay up to date on that. For example, today I'm having an absolutely monster night in the one game matchup, Phoenix Portland, and we went through everything last night. Andrew, Michael and I did. I don't know if you had a chance to listen to last night's show. Did you?
I did.
Oh, good. So then you know what I'm talking about. So we had some good things we hit on, some guys that really went nuts tonight. Tyler Johnson being 1% owned, filled it up. But, the bottom line is the news came out a couple of hours before tip that Ayton and Booker and one more key guy
Rubio.
Yeah, all three of those guys were ruled out. And, if you're not paying attention, I looked on DraftKings, for example, in the one big tournament, and all of those guys were like 7, 8, 9% owned. So those people that, didn't catch that and are taking big fat zeros, they're out of it before it even gets started. So, we're going to give you the best recommendations we can. We're going to go through everything as in-depth as we can, but you've got to be aware of any scratches or changes that happen prior to game time. And the best way to catch those is stay with us on Twitter, because, we're going to stay on top of it the whole time. Okay, so with Garland out, I've been on the Colin Sexton bandwagon here because I think, I know Coach Beilein's style, and he really likes to get his guards involved. He likes to push the pace, take a lot of threes, and Sexton falls just perfectly into his type of system. And he's been getting a good, 25, almost 30 minutes a game, which I sort of expected as well because, Beilein's got such a young group and he's putting his system in. So, even though it's a 5-game slate, I like some of these Cavs tomorrow. Colin Sexton's going to be one of my plug-and-play 100% lock guys that I'm going to put in there. I probably would have, even if Garland wasn't out, and now that Garland's out, it's definitely a no-brainer for me. The other guy that I'm looking at right now, I still have to make my decision, but they're rotating quite a few guys, but I think they may give Kevin Love a little bit more run. He only played 14 minutes the last game. They brought him along very slowly, being the veteran. But, you're seeing the other guys get those upper 20s to 30 minutes. And even though Love's a veteran and they're bringing him in slow, bringing him along slow to save him for regular season, he still needs to get some continuity, with the new system. So I'm probably going to be a contrarian play and look at Kevin Love tomorrow. So Sexton and Love are definitely my first two options. And then maybe a Jetty Osman would be the third choice that might slip in if I do play one other GPP. I'm a little afraid of Tristan Thompson because he played 30 minutes as a veteran the last game, and usually they don't do that. And same thing with Larry Nance. Nance played 28. So for Cleveland, I'm going Sexton, lock and load. More than likely, Love is my contrarian, lower owned, more expensive guy, and Jetty Osman is my third. How about you?
Well, I'm with you on Sexton as the number one play there. I agree. He's money, and you're right. He played 26 minutes, and with Garland being out, likely, I would expect him to play at least that much. Rozier did well against Boston here in the preseason, so I don't think there's any reason to expect Sexton won't as well. As you probably do, I love to pair guards like this with guys he can lob to, like Tristan Thompson, Larry Nance Jr. So interesting that those were the next two guys for me.
Yeah.
And the reason I like Tristan Thompson and Larry Nance Jr. is because they both played 29 minutes. So that means they played together for at least some of the game. And I mean, I would not be surprised if Tristan Thompson plays less, but two of the other bigs are out, Henson and Zizic. So maybe that's why he's playing a little bit more than you might expect. But my first play here would be Sexton and pairing him with Thompson or Nance.
I don't blame you at all. They are thin up front, and I think you certainly can make a case for them. So I'm with you, man. That's a good call. As far as Boston goes, I'll jump over to the other side of the ball. Kemba is questionable as it's listed right now. So have you heard anything else on Kemba's status other than questionable?
That's the latest I've heard, along with Wanamaker, also questionable, and he played 15 minutes last time out.
Correct. I'm not going to anticipate that Kemba's going to play. I mean, it just makes absolutely no sense. And Stevens usually will protect his guys. And even if he does play, I got to think it's going to be very limited minutes. Stevens has done a great job. And I figured he would do this because they had four guys that played on the FIBA team. I figured he was really going to try to split minutes. I mean, if you look at their last game, they had 17 guys play. And 15 of them played 10 minutes or more. So it's like, very, very hard to narrow in. I've played a couple of these guys, throughout. Tatum has done a decent job. Hayward's done a decent job. I even had a flyer the one game with Carson Edwards off the bench, and he did well. But personally, for me, Andrew, it's just too many guys rotating. I just don't see anybody personally that I think is going to, take hold of 25, 30 minutes and smash their number. And with 5 games slate, I'm going to the pass button on Boston.
Hey, we're perfectly aligned. It's funny. The one note I had on that was 17 deep on Friday. And
wow.
That's a lot of guys. And even with Kemba out, those 4 wing players, including Marcus Smart, they only played between 21 and 24 minutes. They all have decent prices, but it's hard to predict which one is going to jump out on any given night. Mike Apotria often talks about guys that he just can't quite get right. Jaylen Brown is one of those guys for me, and he played well in the last game, but he may be a no-show, even if he plays 20 minutes. So I'm actually a pass on the Celtics as well.
Wow, we are on the same page, man. You're, like I said, I told Dan, you're way smarter than Mike Apotria, man. It's so good to have somebody of intellectual equalness on the show. I'm just kidding there.
Absolutely.
Michael is a smart guy, even though he's not that good looking. No, I'm just kidding. All right, so we go on to game 2, New Orleans, and I'm embarrassed to say the last 2 New Orleans games I faded Zion, and I watched very intently as he made like 25 dunks. So one thing I'm not going to do is fade Zion. I'm just going to say that right out front. I'm not messing with Zion anymore in the fade column. I don't know if I'm going to play him, but I'm not going to fade him. So I'll let you lead off since I've been laying an egg with the New Orleans boys.
Yeah, I'm happy to chat about them, and I think that's a wise approach for the rest of his career. Don't fade Zion, especially when he's still at 8.5K. And I mean, who knows? He really doesn't have anything left to prove here in the preseason. So again, like with Tristan Thompson, it wouldn't surprise me if this is finally the night that he plays less, and they are on the road. I think part of the reason he came back in the fourth quarter in their last game was because it was home, but you're right. He's just been incredible, and the impressive thing about how he's scoring is he's doing it off the dribble with both hands. He's getting to the rim, and so my question for this game is who is going to guard Zion? If you look at the two traditional bigs for the Spurs, LaMarcus Aldridge and Pirtle, he's going to beat them off the dribble with either hand whenever he wants. So
Yeah.
if he's going to play a similar amount of minutes, then you have to play Zion. And what I've been looking at throughout the preseason is Lonzo and Nickeil Alexander-Walker as the two guards to match up with him. He got to play with both of them during this last game. The amazing thing about Nickeil Alexander-Walker is he put up those incredible numbers last game, 22 points in only 16 minutes. He's just playing
15 minutes.
really efficient
and,
ball.
And 22 points, and he also had 2 rebounds and 4 assists
Yep.
in 15 minutes,
Yep.
man. That's impossible.
Yeah, and he's still only 4.9, so I like him. I like Lonzo at 6.2. The bigs, I would probably stay away from. Finally, I don't know if Okafor is going to be back. Then you probably have to pass on Jackson Hayes. But Favors at 5K, he only played 11 minutes, so I'd probably pass on the bigs other than Zion.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I like Jackson Hayes a lot, and I like some of their bigs. Even Nicolo Melli's been good, but just such a monstrosity of depth and young guys and rotation. I've been fading New Orleans a lot, but man, I'll tell you what, they're such an exciting young team to watch, and NAW. As they're calling him now, because he's so good. You can just call him by his initials now. He's definitely going to make. He's not only going to make that Pelicans team. I think he's going to be in their rotation. I don't see how you don't play him. I mean, my son and I saw him play a ton in person in the summer leagues, and we were in awe. I mean, he was so good. It was like, how did this guy get moved back in the draft where they were able to take him, and how was it such a secret? He made first team all summer league, and we kept saying, is he going to be able to crack that lineup with Ball and Hart and Redick and all the even Frank Jackson? Those guys were ahead of him, but I think for me, I'm playing him tomorrow. I'm a believer. I know that no one puts up those numbers in 15 minutes, but I think maybe he gets a little extra run. That's just what I'm thinking. I think he gets, I think that Gentry sees that he's going to be part of this rotation and may get him a little bit more time with some of the regulars like Ingram and Zion and maybe he even runs alongside Lonzo a little bit. That's what they did with Josh Hart in this last game. So I'm going to look for Mr. NAW in my lineups. And other than that, I'm not going to say fade Zion, but I am not going to go any further for 2 reasons. One, Utah plays extremely slow pace and good defense, even though nobody can match up against Zion. But I know Utah will have some difficulty there. But that reason and the fact
you're
that
thinking about the last game and how nobody could match up with them.
I'm sorry. You're
now
right.
we're off to
You're
San
right.
Antonio.
What I'm trying to say is what my thinking was there is San Antonio is very similar to Utah in a slow down pace, good defense pace. Thank you for correcting me on that. So even though they put up decent numbers and scored a lot in that last game, 128 points against the Jazz, there's no way that they're going to go into San Antonio, in my opinion, and do anything like that. I think the Spurs will slow it down and crunch them down a little bit defensively. So that's why I'm going to pass mainly on those guys. But, again, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think deserves to make some lineups, and he's affordable. So.
Yeah, Coach
What do you got?
Coach Gentry would have to be trying to throw the game, any game he coaches, if NEW isn't a main part of the rotation. I think he's absolutely a lock, even in the
I
regular
would think
season.
so, man. I mean, he has outplayed the shorts off of Josh Hart. Josh Hart's been awful. So I don't know. I
How,
don't know.
how about the Spurs? Who do you like over there?
All right, Spurs side. I think DeJounte Murray is really looking healthy. He's playing without a knee brace or anything. He's been, really taken over the team from Derek White. That was a lot of question what was going to happen this year with White having such a fine year last year, but that's been washed away. I don't think there's any question. Murray's the starting point guard of this team, and I think Pop gives him a decent enough run, and the pace that the Pelicans play at, which is such a fast pace. I think he's in play. He's going to make a good amount of my lineups. After that, again, their rotation is really interesting, but I think I'm going to consider, believe it or not, LaMarcus Aldridge just because I like this matchup and an up-tempo pace with the defenders that they'll have out on the floor. That mid-range game of his, 15, 18 feet is so deadly. And, even if he only gets 20, 24 minutes, something like that, I think that he can do enough damage to help a winning lineup. So those will be the two Spurs that I'm looking at. How about you?
I'm actually interested in DeRozan, assuming he plays.
Okay.
The team hasn't played since last Tuesday.
I know.
Plenty of rest. They're going to have to knock off some rust, get some game action against another team. DeRozan's priced at 6.9. So as you mentioned, that up-tempo game, he's going to have plenty of opportunity to pay off that price tag. And then Rudy Gay coming off the bench, really just because of his price tag at 4.5, depending on your lineup construction, he may be a guy that you want to put in. I'd say probably more for GPP than cash, but he's been playing over 20 minutes and putting up decent numbers. But again, he could potentially have a few more possessions to work with the up-tempo game against the Pelicans potentially. So I would add those two Spurs to the list.
That's a smart play. And if you remember the first Spurs game, DeRozan sat completely just for rest purposes. So he's gonna. I'm glad you brought that up because he's going to be a possibility for me as well. Just in the fact that I'm sure he understands he's got to get these guys in rhythm and going. So that's a good call. Also, I think the Spurs in general, it doesn't hurt to have two of those guys in your lineup, even though it's a 5. There's 10 teams playing, just because of the up tempo, as we said with the Pelicans. So good call there. I like it. All right, how about we go to Game 3, which is Philadelphia at Orlando. I know the Vukovic is questionable. I don't know. They said it's a high ankle sprain. I'd be surprised if he plays. But have you heard of any other injuries in this game?
No, I haven't. But Embiid sat the last one, so I assume he'll be back. That'll be the other big change. But no other injuries that I'm hearing about.
Okay, you want to take Philly?
Sure. So that will be the dynamic that we have to look at. He sat out the last game, and Al Horford really got a bunch of usage and had a really nice full stat line, 11, 9, 3, 3, and 2. And the thing with Philly, though, is even with Embiid out, it was pretty evenly distributed. I mean, Horford was certainly worth playing at that price tag. Simmons, Josh Richardson, Tobias Harris, they all had solid games, but I'm not really getting excited about any of them against the Magic, who play pretty slowly. They are pretty strong defensively. So the only guy, assuming Embiid's back,
he is from everything I've read.
So last time out when they played that foreign team, he had 17 points in 14 minutes. So he's he can score quickly, but I would probably fade him. And Simmons at 8,000, he would be in some lineups, and then Thibault off the bench. In both games that they've played, combined steals and blocks, he's had 5 in each game, and it's hard to count on him getting 5 every game, but that's a real nice base for your fantasy points. So I like Simmons and Thibault the best.
All right, man. Well, on this one we disagree, and it's cool because our listeners need different opinions for sure. I think Thibault screams just an absolute. He's been in the news. Everybody's talking about him. He's making all these steals. He had 5 steals in 5 minutes a couple of games ago. He just seems like such a sucker play to me. And I don't mean that negatively towards you at all. I just saying in general, I just think I think he's going to be over-owned for a guy that last game played 18 minutes and only had 3 points. I mean, he's just getting all this praise heaped upon him, and I just think so to me, he's a cross-off. The guy that I'm going to plug in for sure to every lineup, 100%, is Embiid. Vuk is probably not going to play. If he does, he's not going to be at complete health. They've been super, super cautious with Bamba. They're not letting him play more than 15 to 17 minutes a game max. And after that, I don't know who's going to stop Embiid. And Embiid's, to me, I think will play 20 to 25 minutes. He has not played in the mid-20s in a long time here, and they want to get him some run. And I think he's just, he's such a monster DFS points per minute guy. So Embiid's going to be in all my lineups. I will possibly look at Simmons because, again, he's a guy that just all of a sudden you look at the stats sheet with that guy and he's almost got a triple-double. So depending on the builds and if I can fit him, I mean, that's like the 3rd or 4th point guard out of the 6 teams I've recommended. So, I mean, you can only fit so many of them. But to me, I'm going Embiid and possibly Simmons. And that's really all for Philly for me.
That makes sense. I do feel like it's a bold call to plan on Embiid in close to 100% of your lineups. But the thing, of course, is that you're going to check for any news, and because the thing is with Embiid, I mean, he could be texting Coach Brown right now talking about whether he's going to play tomorrow and how many minutes, because we know we've seen that before from him. But yeah, I mean, I love his game. So if he's going to play 20 plus minutes, certainly makes sense.
And I mean, even at worst case scenario for me that he does roll 20, which I can't imagine he's going to play less than 20. It just wouldn't make any sense. I mean, that's all he needs to make his value. I mean, 2 times value probably at minimum, which is, I think you're going to need, especially, in a cash game where the centers are not exactly plentiful on this slate. So that's what I'm looking at. We'll see. I mean, it's always a question. Now, on the Orlando side, with, like I mentioned, with this whole scenario, with the big issue with Vuk being very, very questionable with that ankle, and then Bamba on such a massive limits minute. I know the coach had talked about giving Kem Birch a bunch of run last game, and a lot of people got sucked into that. But he only played 19 minutes and threw up an 0-for-1 goose egg. So you certainly can't go back to that well, or you wouldn't want to. And, so really what it comes down to is Aaron Gordon's probably the guy that I look at. He somehow, some way went 1 for 14 the last game, Andrew. 1 for 14.
I know that.
I don't know how that's possible.
That jumped out at me, and you and Mike have also talked about low field goal percentage not being a concern. And
Bingo.
In general, yeah, I agree. The key number there is 14, especially if you weren't playing him that night. What you want is to play him this night and have him go 14 attempts again, and you'll live with the results if he does that.
You are on target, and you must have listened to the show for sure last night, because that was one of the things Mike and I talked a long time about, was really, it's the combination of two things. And I'll repeat it because I think it's so important for everybody, the listeners to really absorb, is if you're getting the minutes on the floor, that's half the battle. Okay, the coach is playing you the minutes, so you got that part. And, minutes equal money, dude. We know that for sure. The second part is if you're willing to have the stones to take those shots and chug them up there and get them up, even when you're, 1 for 10, you're still taking 4 more shots. That's the guy that I want, because those
for
will
fantasy.
fall.
That's who we want for fantasy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Exactly right. Now, as a real coach, I would be not pulling my hair out because I'm bald, but I'd be scratching my head, I guess. But
right.
But no, Aaron Gordon, for that reason, I think he's got to be a strong consideration. And the other guy that's played so well in the preseason and just looks like he's taking that step from, just a regular NBA player to somewhat of a star of the team, is Jonathan Isaac. I think he's just looks so much more confident out there and smooth, and they're running plays for him for the first time. So Gordon and Isaac will make some of my lineups, and really that's it for me for Orlando.
Yeah, before our chat here, I was focusing more on the bench when I was looking at Orlando with Fultz, Ross, and Amino. They all played over 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And as you know, I like to stack games. So if you're playing multiple tournaments, I'm gonna have one stack where I actually put those 3 together. Fultz, Ross, and Amino. Ross has scored over 20 points in both preseason games, I believe.
And he's gunning. He's just gunning, man.
Yeah,
no
he is gunning. And
he took 11 threes in that last game.
Right. I mean, that's also what you want. And
sure.
Amino had a decent line at 4. He's at 4.4, and then Fultz didn't shoot well last time out, but this is the rematch. Remember, Coach?
Oh yeah,
his career started with the Sixers, so I'm gonna say he's gonna come out with a bunch of energy and be aggressive the entire time he's out.
Narrative, man.
Yep.
We've got narrative city right there. I didn't even think of it.
Yeah, I would buy property in Narrative City if I could.
I'm with you, dude. And he wants to stick it to him because they gave up on him.
Yep.
So good call. That's going to be one. They should start him. That would be cool if they, started him against the old squad. But that's a great point. I bet you he gets a decent amount of ownership because of that.
Yep.
Fantastic. I like that point. Anything? So who were your final? You're looking at the bench, more of the Ross Fultz kind of thing?
Yeah, and so if I could only play one, it would be Fultz because of the narrative. But Ross, again, that could be a trap also because he might go 2 for 9, and he's priced up. He's finally priced up at 6.1. So
yeah.
Maybe not cash, but a couple tournament plays.
He really went up quite a bit in the last couple games. He was cheap initially. That's a good point. All right. That is game 3, correct?
That's game 3. We got 2 more games at 6 o'clock. Which one are we doing next?
We are going to do the Bulls in Toronto. But before we jump into that, so that I don't lose my place and forget what I'm doing, again, a quick shout out to our presenting sponsor, Fantasy Draft. Make sure to go to fantasydraft.com and sign up with the promo Hoopball and get that 7-day free membership. Get on there and play that $500,000 Hooters contest on Sunday. Also, remember that listen to us 7 days a week. No doubt in my mind, we're the best DFS 7-day content that's free out there in the industry. So we thank Fantasy Draft and Hoopball for that. You can find us wherever podcasts are found. iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Podbean, iHeart, Spotify, YouTube, everywhere. And we would ask you to take a minute or two at the very most, not even that long it takes, to rate, review, and subscribe. Pop us those 5 stars, likes, the thumbs up. I know we're blowing up on YouTube, so those likes and thumbs up mean a lot. And that just really helps keep our sponsors happy and allows us to continue 7-day free content for you. So we appreciate that. And, we've given you our Twitter handles. Make sure at Joe Sarvati, at Language Olympic, and at Mike Apotria that you hit us up there with any questions, ideas, comments on the show. We would appreciate that. All right, we go to the final two games. Chicago-Toronto. Chicago Bulls are in your court, Mr. Andrew.
The Bulls, all right. Well, interesting situation here is they rested a bunch of the starters last time out. So now,
oh my God, it was incredible. There was barely enough guys to play last game. It was so funny.
Yeah, it was. It was. So they'll be back as a group. But the one note here, the one caveat is that Otto Porter Jr. has some left hamstring soreness, so he may be limited with his minutes. So
okay.
I'm going to probably stay away from him because of that, which is disappointing because I really like how he looked last time out. But I'll just go with Levine at 7.4 after sitting one out. He's going to be back, and I just think he looks excellent here in the preseason. So I think he's primed for a huge season, and he would be in probably most, if not all, of my lineups at that price tag.
Okay.
Kobe White, 5.1. Probably won't play the 30 minutes that he did last time out with Satoransky back, but he's got to be in some of my lineups. And I got to mention, his line jumped out at me because he went 24-8 last time out, but it was not 8 assists.
I know.
It was 8 rebounds.
No, but what's worse is it was 0 assists.
Right.
How do you play 30 minutes at the point and have 0 assists?
I mean, it is tough, but that's the great thing is that he pulled down 8 rebounds, which I love. I love guards who are aggressive like that. And actually, I want to ask you because I know you saw him in Vegas.
Yeah.
How tall do you think he is?
Oh, I'll tell you what, he's like 145 pounds soaking wet. I mean, the dude is so skinny and he's not that tall, but he's grease lightning. He's so quick. I mean, I think I equated him the other day to Ty Lawson. If you remember when he first came to the league, it's like the ball's inbounded and one dribble, he's past half court. And all of a sudden, 2.5 seconds, the out of the ball coming out of the basket, he's over there converting a layup. So he's grease lightning. I mean, I'm super impressed with him, but to answer your question, I mean, he is not very big. He's, it's not even as much as height as just his slightness. I mean, it's like somebody could just, break that poor dude in half. But, I watched a lot of that game because Kobe was one of my key plays that night, and he was fairly low owned, under the circumstances of them being so shorthanded. And that stat line, I mean, I am so impressed that you pulled that out because I was going to bring up the same thing. And I watched a lot of that game, though, and he did not share the ball. And he did take some bad shots as well and just looked like he was I think he's pushing a little bit because I think he wants to earn a spot, which you can't blame him. I mean, you've got, Satoransky and Dunn really ahead of him on the depth chart at this point, and he's trying to solidify either a rotational spot at the very worst or maybe even a starting role. So I don't know. I mean, I'm so torn. I loved watching that game from a fantasy standpoint, but I see some regression there this game. So I'm going to fade him, but I love, the potential of what he can bring to the table. And I would play him personally. I'd play him alongside of Satoransky a lot because Satoransky's big enough to slide over, when you're going smaller, maybe move Levine over, rotate the 3. I think the odd man out in my book is Chris Dunn, but, we'll see. He's an old school kind of coach, Boylan. So he may like Dunn's defensive prowess and a little bit more experience, but I don't know. Did I interrupt you with Chicago? I think you were still doing your deal.
No, I asked you about Kobe's size, and I just want to make one more point, which is that he's listed on ESPN as being 6'5",
No
And
way.
I didn't think so. I mean, I didn't go to Vegas this year, so I didn't see him in person. But
I'd say 6'3", 145. I mean,
okay,
I'm serious.
yeah, he's listed at 6'5", 185, and of
No
course,
way.
a lot of the teams are finally coming out with the actual heights this this year. So I haven't seen any release from the Bulls, but that's what he's listed at on ESPN. So anyway, just something to another thing that jumped out at me with Kobe White. So I agree. Can't expect quite the output that he had last time out, but yeah, Levine's my guy there, and then I'm going to shy away from the front court with Wendell Carter Jr. coming back, but he won't play a bunch of minutes, and that'll mean Gafford won't get as many minutes. So I'm going to stay away from that front court.
I'm with you. You know, between Gafford and Carter and Felicio and all that, I mean, there's just no way, in my opinion, you can play any of those guys. Um, you know, I'm with you. I like Levine. I've been in the Levine camp right along. I think this is the year he's looking to take his game to another level. I think after resting a game, he's going to be in there firing. He is not shy whatsoever. So I'm with you. I think Levine's my only play out of this game, and I'm planning on using him quite a bit and expecting him to produce. And then as far as the Toronto side, I know we've got Marc Gasol listed as out, and Lowry is listed as questionable, but he has not played a single game since he had the thumb surgery this summer. So number one, I don't think he's going to play, and number two, if he does, how many minutes is the guy really going to log when he hasn't been in live action for since the end of last season? So that changes the complexion of the game a little bit for sure. Obviously the guy that's going to be high owned here, and he's going to be high owned a lot this year because he's probably going to have such massive usage, is Siakam. And, certainly can't fault anybody for playing him. I may put Siakam in some of my lineups as well. Other than that, though, I mean, Toronto's a quick one for me. I don't like their, rotation pace right now. I still think, I think Toronto's going to be possibly one of the biggest regressions just of a team in general from coming off a championship of maybe ever. And so I'm not expecting much for them. Not many of their players stand out to me other than Siakam, which I will use a lot just because he's going to be just a usage absolute monster. So, I'll put him in where I can fit him cost-wise. He's not the cheapest guy, but, he may very well be worth it. But after that, though, I mean, I'm just not super comfortable. I know Gasol's out, so, you may want to play one of their bigs, but they rotated so many guys. Serge probably isn't going to get a monster amount of minutes. Van Fleet is the same thing. So I'm pretty much Siakam and pass.
Yes, Siakam number one for me as well, and I agree that the biggest piece of news here is, will Lowry play? This would be a situation where I would hope that he would not play from a fantasy perspective, because I am interested in the trio of Siakam, Fred VanVleet, and Serge Ibaka.
Okay.
I think those three guys playing together, high correlation. And Ibaka's, his price tag is too low at 4.6. So
yeah,
if Lowry is out, I would have a few lineups with those three together. Van Fleet's only 5.4K. He had two strong games in a row, including a double-double last time out. And then the other thing here is that this is Toronto's first home game. They've been playing overseas.
Good point.
So I'd expect those three to get a few more minutes at home for the home fans.
I'm gonna nickname you Stackenstein.
I like that.
The stack monster. So Stackenstein is fires back. I like the strategy. I'm not a big stacker. I try to find each guy. Usually, if it's a super high paced, I have no problem taking two guys from each team or something. But Other than that, I'm not the Stackenstein like you are, which I like. A lot of people win. That's how you take down big GPPs. You stack the right squad, and you have a 140, 137 in overtime game, and you're going to win with that stack. So I think that that's a good strategy. It's more of a GPP strategy, but you know what? We have a lot of GPP players that listen, so that's why I'm glad you and Apotri are on here to teach me something in that kind of strategy. So good stuff. All right, last game on the slate, and to finish up our final show together, or first show, not final show, first show.
First show.
The final team is Milwaukee versus Washington, or the final team. So Milwaukee, God knows, what do you do with Giannis, man? I played him 23 minutes against the Mavs, 34 points, 11 rebounds, 4 assists, and a steal. I mean, good night. I mean, are you kidding me? Is he going to get enough minutes? What do you think about Giannis? I want to get your input on this one.
Yeah, that is the question here. And the first reaction I have is thinking back to Embiid, because you got to look at those guys as in the context of their price. Giannis is 8.9, Embiid is 8.5. And so if I'm building a cash lineup, I'm thinking about just picking one of those two. I'm probably going to go with Giannis, just because I think he's, you just read off the numbers, and I had them written down. It was a monstrous fantasy output in 23 minutes.
But my question would be, is Giannis is coming off that big performance, and Embiid's coming off a rest game. See, right. That's what switches my thinking anyway.
And the other thing here is the Bucks and the Wizards are both top 10 in pace last year. This is the only matchup on the slate where both teams meet that criteria. So this would be the one game on paper that I would want to stack, and Giannis would be right in the middle of it. So I like Giannis, but I hear your concern. Absolutely.
Yeah, I know for sure I'm going to pass this entire team. I looked at this earlier, and I've said all along in the preseason, one of the things you steer clear from is the teams that are established, that are pretty much in place from the year before, that have veterans. I mean, they really have. They don't need to build chemistry. They don't need to figure out rotations. All of that stuff is done. I mean, you've got the coach of the year coaching him. He's a smart coach. I think what Giannis provided the last game was phenomenal, but I just don't see any of these guys having enough minutes and enough usage to really make any kind of a difference. So for that reason, I'm going to pass.
How about Brook Lopez? One of the things that is hard to continue to do, and it's easy to slack on, is when you look back at the box scores and you only look at the most recent box score. Yeah. And then you forget about Brook Lopez because he didn't play in that game. He played. Right. So, you go back 2 games ago, 20 minutes, he went for 14, 3, and 1. Yeah. Nothing crazy, but he's at 5.3K, and you mentioned the dearth of centers on this slate. So what about him coming back into the lineup, maybe getting up some more shots here and taking advantage of the Washington front court?
No, I think you bring up a good point, but here's the thing. If it's a 2-game slate or a 3-game slate without a lot of centers, then I consider him. But in this group of centers that we just talked about, all playing, I mean, he's just not going to make my cut. I mean, I get it, but I just don't see him making the cut.
Okay, fair enough.
For me, I mean, again, he could get it done, but you don't know. We should be able to just play the name Lopez at center for them and get both brothers' stats combined. Right. That's what and then you got to really think about it. You get both of them, you could do some damage.
Well, that reminds me. One thing I wanted to mention is the idea of I might have a couple lineups where I pair Giannis and Brook Lopez in the hopes that when they're on the court, I'm going to get every rebound out there. And so I was curious if you ever do that, if you pair two of the bigger players who are going to snatch up all the rebounds. Because the other night, I had this instinct of maybe doing it with Sabonis and Turner, and sure enough, pairing those two together was the way to go in GPPs, because they combined for, listen to this stat line, 21, 21, 6, 2, and 6.
Yikes.
That was when they were playing the Bulls, and Sabonis was less than 5K. I think Turner was 6.1. So
yeah.
do you ever do that? Maybe not if you're playing cash games, but I think it's an interesting approach on us, depending on the context. And so that's why I might do it with Giannis and Brook Lopez on a couple teams.
You know what? I love your idea there. I love that strategy. It's not one that I ever use because it's the old, it's different for me in DFS, you can totally build your rosters in baseball and football and all those different things and stack a few guys and use those strategies. But for me in basketball, it's just, there's such a finite line of being successful, in playing cash games and single entries specifically. To me, I'm looking to maximize those small amount of, 7, 8, 9 guys I get to pick. And, I don't feel like I can smash it by splitting stats at a category, just personally. I mean, I've tried to do that a few different times. What I will do is, like the other night when I played Luka and KP together, I like a guard and a big from the same squad that I think are going to explode. But like I would never take, when the regular season starts, like a Dwight Powell and KP, like the starting 4 or 5, because I don't want my guys competing for those stats. I want to choose the guy that's going to have the biggest stats. That's my cash game philosophy.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for cash games. Absolutely.
But I can see your side being super effective in GPP play. There's no doubt about it. And I think the mass entry guys, that do the fantasy cruncher stuff and kick 150 lineups in there, when they're building their lineups, I think they take that into consideration a lot. Like, if there are two guys like the stat sheet that you just read that are dominating specific categories for their teams in the right matchup, those guys are probably going to get in 15 to 18% of their lineups. And it's just such a different, when you're mass entering like that and building, and, you're pretty much the guy you have the most, you're using maybe 25, 30%, and then you're using a whole shitload of guys like 10%, 8%, 15%. So you can have those kind of builds. But for me, one, that's not my thing. And secondly, I don't find that as fun. I mean, I approach this like an old coach. I want to choose my guys that I think are going to kick ass that night in that matchup for that specific reason. Like, for example, tonight, I used Tyler Johnson, and he's what brought down all these cash games for me tonight, and one for me because he was that contrarian differentiator guy that I figured would go low owned because he didn't play last game because he had a migraine. JaVale Carter played, who's not very good, and I knew he wasn't going to start, so no one would think he was going to do anything. Following him last year, he missed 4 games during the regular season for the Heat with migraines, and it's a common thing that he has, but he always bounces back. Statistically, I looked at those games when he came back just because I remembered him being effective in those comeback games, and 3 out of 4 of those games he smashed it. So I don't know if it was the extra game rest or just coming off of a migraine, he's feeling better, whatever the case may be, and I look for every edge like that to utilize, and I plugged him in there, and he crushed it tonight. He hit a bunch of threes, got it done, and so for me, I'm looking for those specific drill-down diamonds instead of any percentage plays. It's, to me, I like to know who I've got. I'm watching all the games. I have them in for specific reasons, and it also helps me on the case study when we come back. And we'll start doing that when we get into the regular season too. Andrew and Michael will do it with us, as well as we'll look at what we built the night before and why, what was great, what went wrong, what were our reasoning, And to me, that's a good, healthy discussion when you're, like, for example, the long-winded thing I just went in with Tyler Johnson. That makes sense. Not just, okay, I use that guy, 16% of my lineups because, they're third worst in the league against small forwards. I mean, I want more blood and guts and teeth that I can hang on to when I go to battle with these. And I think that that's been a big differentiator, at least for me, consistently winning for the last 5 years in DFS basketball. So there you go, man. That's my soapbox for the night.
No, I love your research. I mean, that's the key is you dig down, you look back at what he did coming back off the games missed due to the migraine. That's the type of deep research you have to do to gain an edge.
I mean, and those are the small edges that most people don't get. Either the GPP guys are throwing everything in to like a fantasy cruncher model, letting it spit out the numbers, or they're just they're looking at that last game and it's if you want an edge, you got to approach this like a coach, a GM, a scout, and I think that's the passion that I'm trying to bring every night with you and Michael and to our listeners is that difference, that edge. I believe personally for myself, I look at this a little bit different than most touts out there, and I've had, some decent now, exchanges with different guys from some of the stronger tout services and such here in the last month specifically. And they all have their styles, and they're all good, and they do well. But I still haven't seen anybody that quite has the approach to it that I do. And I'm not saying mine's better than anybody else's, but it's just a different. I like to look at the game within the game, peel the onion back a few different levels, reasoning behind, and specifically honing in on who you're going to take. And that's why I love these discussions, with you and with Michael, because it brings out some thoughts and ideas and bouncing back and forth. And hopefully what the listeners then are taking out of it is, that made sense or that didn't make sense, or I agree with Andrew here, I agree with Coach here, whatever, and that's how hopefully we help people build some winning lineups. So, it only takes one guy. It's not like, when you're putting a massive baseball lineup in, and you can stick an outfielder in there that takes a zero and it doesn't matter. In basketball, every single guy in that whatever 5, 6, 7, 8 man lineup, depending on what type of contest, has got to kick ass and take names, or you're not going to win. So anyway, good stuff, man. I know we're going super long, and Apotri is going to tease me because I told him we weren't going to try to go as long, and he's the one that makes it longer, but it's always me. I take the blame. All right, Washington Wizards, bro. Ish Smith, questionable. I can't imagine him playing. I think he's out. Bradley Beal's always an option. I just think his limited minutes scare the hell out of me. He was phenomenal. I think he's one of the best top 10 players in the league. I'm a huge Beal fan, but I don't like what Coach Brooks does with his guys in the preseason. I don't like the rotation. The only guy, but unfortunately another center, Thomas Bryant, when he plays, just 100% effort. That's why I love him. But, and he'll get stats in 20 minutes to get it done. It's just, I don't know if I can find a spot with all the centers, especially when Embiid's my favorite play of the night. So, again, with Washington playing against, a good defensive squad from Milwaukee, even if it is their bench, they're good on D. I'm just not comfortable with the Wizards.
I'm not either. Nobody's jumping out here. Beal's played 16 and 18 minutes, so that's worrisome. But yeah, perhaps if it just works out that you need a center and you've got 5.7K, then get Bryant in there because he's good for a double-double most likely.
I'm with you. Anything else on the Wiz?
No, just I love watching Rui, and he put up 11 and 7 in 16 minutes. So you're putting in 15, 20 lineups, maybe get him in one tournament lineup as well.
I think Hashimura, I have him penciled in my first team, all rookie team. That's how much I like the guy.
Yeah,
So
I like that vote as well.
I hope so, man. I hope so. Well, listen, you're terrific, man. I love doing a show with you. You're so much better than a Patria. Oh, I love it. But no, it was great, man. It was great. I'm sorry we went a little long, but it's I wanted to get to know each other and bounce stuff back and forth a little bit. I think the chemistry. Hopefully, our listeners, they can always fast forward through stuff if they want to, but hopefully they enjoy it. You listen to some of these and it sounds like a computer spitting stuff out, and I like the personality and fun and banter. So great stuff, man. Great stuff.
Pleasure to be with you, Coach. Can't wait to do it again.
Terrific. Any final words?
Nope. Check for injuries. I mean, that especially in the preseason with all the volatility in minutes and guys resting, just follow Hoopball Fantasy. And another place you can go is on the Hoopball website. You go to the team pages and you can see all the updates for that particular team, which it's nice to have in one place. So that's another resource for you along with Twitter.
Yes, and I mean you can't afford to miss one of those changes or your lineup could be dead. So great call. All right, fantastic. Well, we thank you for joining us on Hoopball NBA DFS today. For my man Andrew Hanson, I am Coach, and we will catch you again tomorrow when we look to crush it in fantasy DFS. Have a good one.
This has been a Hoop Ball presentation.